those bluefish are doing what they do in the spring in our area, where they're kind of mudding up on those flats, kind of lightly waving their tail around in the air a little bit, swimming around in chains like that, you can't beat that on the fly rod. It just gets that heart pumping.
Hello and welcome back to the Fat Dad Fishing Show. I'm your host, Rich Natoli, back again with another show talking about the transition into the summer fishing. It's a big deal. You know, a lot of people fish the same way all year long and wonder why sometimes they're good and sometimes they're not. And a lot of it often comes down to you're not changing up your tactics, you're not understanding what's going on in the water and with the species you're targeting. So we're going to talk about that tonight, and we've got Captain for Badfish Charters out of OC, Captain Brian Williams, coming on. So we're going to talk with him about that. We'll talk a little bit about striped bass, a little bit about everything, and a little bit of conservation thrown in there because, you know, that's just what we do on this channel. So everyone, thank you for tuning in. It's that time of the summer where it's tough to get people live on and watching because everyone's on vacation and down at the shore. But oddly enough, the listens on the podcast skyrocket. So most of you are probably listening at this point after this is live. Welcome everybody that is live. And as always, put any questions, any topics you want to talk about into the chat, and we'll try to get to those as we can throughout. And I will do my best to ignore my brother, who I see in there, who will have nothing productive to add to the conversation. All right, and with that, let's go through the sponsors. Great Bay Outfitters on Radio Road in Tuckerton, New Jersey. If you're a kayak fisherman or fisherwoman, or you would like to be, you got to check out Great Bay Outfitters. It is one of the only shops that has the on-the-water experience. So you can go down, you can tell Paul, look, I want to look at these 2 or 3 different types of kayaks to compare before I buy. And in that case, he's going to bring them out back, and you're going to go on the lagoon and you're going to get to test them out. That is the single most important thing for anyone looking to spend the money and make that investment into a kayak. It doesn't matter what your best friend has. It doesn't matter what your brother has or whatever. It only matters what works for you. And Paul will help you to dial in on that. He's got multiple brands, even got the skiffs, and he is the guy who will get your ride basically pimped out. He can do everything, all the wiring, and he does it clean the right way. So you want to power it up, he'll power it up for you. Next one is Quad Stay Tuned with Kevin Driscoll being your contact. If you have a Toyota truck, a Tundra, Tacoma, 4Runner, a Lexus 460, 470, great engines, but they could do with a tune to get better performance out of them. So if you want improved throttle response, improved torque, and improved horsepower, if you have a 3rd gen Tacoma that has the gear seeking issue, this will take care of it. And they're not all that expensive either. You'd be surprised at how inexpensive these can be to get better performance out of your truck. You can reach Kevin at 484-633-5975. And then the last one, your final sponsor, is me. I am a real estate agent in southeastern Pennsylvania. That's what I do to pay the bills. Yeah, I appreciate all the business, and I do have business that does come through people that watch this live stream and listen to the podcast. It is greatly appreciated. So if you or somebody you know is looking to buy, sell, invest in real estate in southeastern Pennsylvania, I am with Weichert Realtors Cornerstone. Give me a call, email, or text. It's natolirealestate@gmail.com. Or you can give me a call at 267-270-1145 or a text if you prefer. And with that said, we're going to jump over. We're not going to wait on this one. We're going to bring Captain Brian Williams on right now. And welcome to the show.
Hey, Rich, thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. I was saying to you backstage, I'll say it in front of everybody. Throughout the year, I get a lot of requests for people to come on. And, you know, I get the huge names of people that are like Jeremy Wade. Jeremy Wade's never coming on. And I don't know why we'd want Jeremy Wade to come on. But then I hear your name come up a lot. So I want to, and for 2 reasons. First of all, you are a very responsible, I guess, outspoken, conservation-minded fisherman. And you run your business that way. And the second thing is, as one guy said, he just catches a S ton of fish. shit ton of fish. So
Maybe on a good day.
well, yeah, hey, it all depends on the day. So why don't you just take a moment, introduce people to Badfish Charters, how they can get in touch with you if they want to book a charter, and then we'll start talking about this transition.
Yeah, sure. So my name is Brian Williams. I own and run Badfish Charters. We run out of the Ocean City area, just over the bridge from Ocean City and Summers Point. Easiest way to get in touch with me would be to give me a call. My number is 856-371-4346. Or you could drop me an email. Also visit my website. It's ocnjfishing.com, or my Facebook, which is Badfish Charters OC, or Capt Brian Williams on Instagram.
Awesome. I got to say, I love the name of your business.
Thanks.
It's just a great name.
That's a big name that made sense. Years ago, before I even started the business, I gave the boat that name. So it kind of segued into the business at that point.
It's a good name. It's a good name for the boat. What number boat are you on? Are you still on the first?
This is out running the business out of it. This will be the second one. Prior to that, I've had multiple boats through my life, whether they're mine or my parents or other family members. It's
funny. I talked to a lot of captains over the past several years, and they always say, yeah, I thought my first boat was awesome. And then I had to get my second boat. And now I can't see myself moving on from that. And then all of a sudden they're on their third boat, fourth boat.
Well, it's nice to keep them updated. That's important for reliability sometimes. Or turn around and sell it quicker,
Yeah, reliability and the experience for your customers. Yeah, I think it's all important. So yes, so thank you for coming on. We're facing right now, and it's a little weird. We don't have quite that summer shift yet. We haven't had those extended heat waves yet. Actually, I guess it's not weird. This is about the time where we start getting them. We start getting the spikes in water temperatures in the backwaters. What have you been seeing lately out on your trips as far as the way that, are you still in your spring patterns, or are you starting to transition into the summer at this point?
Kind of both at this point. It seems to go back and forth.
Okay.
Day to day, week to week, it keeps changing. I mean, generally speaking, we're behind a couple weeks on water temperatures. Yep. We still are. Even right now, the ocean hasn't broken 70 yet this year. And, just yesterday when I was out front fishing some wrecks and reefs and some areas like that, I was actually colder a couple miles off the beach at about 64, and then jumped up to 68 in a couple areas. And then I got back closer to the beach again, and it dropped even more again, back down to about 61, 62. So it's kind of all over the place right now. And then we had an upwelling 4 days back.
Yep.
Not as much in South Jersey, more in Central and North Jersey, where the water temp for those guys dropped down to 51 for a minute, tight to the beach.
Yeah.
And then my bay temps still haven't broke 80 yet. They're still hovering between, incoming tides in the 60s, like I said, and then outgoing tides might hit like 75, 76 in some areas.
So for me, I don't know if you agree, I love that. If you have longer, now I don't like the upwelling. Let's just be clear. But the longer that we stay in the spring temperature zones, I think is always better for the fishing and for the fish.
Yep.
So I hear that and I think great. Now let me ask you this. So when you're out there and you're seeing the 64 degrees and then you're seeing it go to 68, where are you getting the bite? Are you getting it in the 68 or the 64?
Well, if I'm out in the ocean and bottom fishing, that's not super relevant usually. Easiest way to explain that, because I'm not dropping a thermometer to bottom, is just feel the flounder or feel the sea bass when you touch him. Does he feel colder than the water around him or warmer?
Oh, good call. Good call. I was seeing some really nice fluke being caught off the beaches in middle New Jersey areas. So, like Atlantic County and a little bit north, actually. I've seen some really nice, 8-9 pounders being pulled out lately. What's your experience been in the backwaters the last couple of weeks?
The backwaters finally turned on for those flounder or fluke, depending on what region you want to call them. Down South Jersey, a lot of us call them flounder. I know just north of us by a river or two, they call them fluke. Same difference.
Yeah.
It's just starting to wake up, though. It's been like a slow progression of bait fish this year. We really haven't seen that explosion of life like I'd like to see. Usually in the late spring and the summer, it's like one day it's a little quiet, and all of a sudden it's just like bait fish everywhere.
Right.
We haven't seen that this year. It's just kind of been like here and there, they're showing up, but not that huge explosion. Which is why the blue fishing kind of sucked this year in the bay.
The blue fishing sucked?
I didn't see them up on the flats like I usually do.
Wow.
Not in any good numbers.
Yeah, it's you maybe get the little snappers rolling through, and that's about it. That's the worst. To me, the bluefish is always so. I typically fish further south, so I'm typically down the Wildwood, Stone Harbor, Avalon area, and there are some really nice flats. And to me, it's starting to really shift into a good season when you get those big bluefish up in the flats. So 3 feet of water, and you're catching an 8-9 pound bluefish. That's a good indication because they're chasing the bait up there. But if they're not up there, I get concerned.
Yep. Yeah, that's always a great bonus in the spring is to be able to run into those bluefish right around the first week of May or so. At least in my region in particular, we'll get like 30-inch to 35-inch bluefish just tailing on the flats and like less than a foot of water.
Yeah, we don't typically get those down south.
It's neat. It's neat.
I wish.
It's a blast on the fly rod.
Yeah. So do you do a lot of fly?
When I can, when it calls for it.
So
there's nothing worse than spending hours upon hours trying to blind cast the fly out there for a fish that might not show up. But when there's fish around, if there's fish busting on the surface, or if it's like, oh shit, I threw 4 casts in a row and got bit on all 4 casts on the top water, then it's really a good time to throw a fly out there.
Yeah. So what are you typically targeting with the fly?
Striper, or in that instance, we were just talking about bluefish.
You are doing bluefish.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. If those bluefish are doing what they do in the spring in our area where they're kind of mudding up on those flats, kind of lightly waving their tail around in the air a little bit, swimming around in chains like that, you can't beat that on the fly rod. It just gets that heart pumping.
So, yeah. So, okay. So I guess I'm a little bit of a sissy because I never target bluefish, even when they're up there with the fly rod, because maybe it's just I'm a poor fly fisherman, but I can never land them. I always end up getting broken off by them. Now I can land a striped bass. I've landed mahi. I've landed shark, smaller shark, but I can't land a bluefish. You're gonna have to teach me how to do this.
I use tieable wire tippet, real light stuff. Real.
Oh, you are using wire. Okay.
Yeah. I'll use a piece like maybe this big.
Yeah.
Like a 4 or 5 inch piece.
Okay.
And that's all you need. That is helpful.
All right. Well,
keeps you getting bit off.
Maybe I got to get out there and get that. All right. Let's start off. I want to spend a good amount of time talking about striped bass, but before we get to that, let's get other things out. So when you're taking people out on charters, what is it that you're typically going to be targeting over the next month?
Over the next month, we've pretty much mostly hung up the striper fishing at this point in the year, mainly doing the flounder thing or fluke, depending on where you're talking to, where you're from. Everybody confuses that. That's why I said that twice.
Yeah. I get a lot of it because we have actually our biggest audience is New York. So we got a lot of New York people and they like to get on me about fluke versus flounder. And the South Jersey are like, yeah, you got to get to a certain point here before. So I just say fluke now. I just gave in. I gave in to the peer pressure.
It seems like the Mulligan River is the cutoff. Anywhere south of there, people call them flounder. Anywhere north of there, they're strictly called fluke.
Yeah.
Everywhere north of there has a winter flounder fishery.
Exactly. Yeah. And the winter flounder south of the Mullica, you can get them, but it's not a very good fishery. I remember back in the day.
Grass beds. And we don't have grass beds like that in South Jersey, not in 100 years.
No. And anything that could be is just dead. It's just dead stuff sitting in there. All right. So you're targeting fluke. What are you doing? What is it? This is the first time we've talked. So let's kind of like lay a little groundwork. So you're out there. What are you typically having them put on? Are you casting? Are you vertical jigging? What is it that you're using for the terminal tackle on that?
A little bit of both, casting and jigging. This spring, I've done a lot more casting than I do other springs, probably because the bite was a little slow to start. And also, it's been so windy.
Yeah.
So I'm finding that if I just put the trolling motor in, just hold in position over a small hole, very comparable to how you would speckled trout fish down south.
Yeah.
You're fishing smaller ditches and stuff like that. Same idea. Work those areas, catch every flounder you can out of there, and then move on to the next one or the next edge and drop off. Generally a 1 ounce bucktail or 1 ounce jig head, and then anywhere from 6 to 8 inches above that, I'll tie a dropper loop off with a 3/0 Gamakatsu hook on there, and then both Gulp.
Okay, both gulp. Is there a certain kind of gulp that you prefer on either hook or?
Usually the 4-inch swimming mullet, but then once you get a lot of tail biters out there, I'll switch over to the 4-inch grub.
Yeah.
If I'm right, the 4-inch maybe came out like 3 years ago. Gulp started making that one. It's like the smaller grub.
Yeah.
Let's see if I just.
Yeah, we're going to start getting into those tail biters in the next couple of
something
weeks.
like this.
Yep. And that's the perfect color.
I honestly, I don't really think they give a damn much about color. I darks. That's the way I see it.
I'm changing my view on it. You know, I always say the one thing I will say is this: I will always recommend white because white just works. It doesn't matter what you're throwing. If it's white, it's probably going to work. I do believe that at night, using a dark profile or in dirty water helps, but it's not the color, it's the dark because it sets off that silhouette. For some reason, that bubble gum does tend to work, but I don't recommend it more than anything else. I just think the whole thing is just made for us at this point. And that's not the way I felt a couple of years ago.
Well, you got to remember, at least in deeper water, the way the light spectrum works with light penetration down deep, white and chartreuse, I think it's something like 40, 50, 60 feet. They both turn white.
Yes.
And then pink or some kind of hue of pink or red turns black at like 80 feet or something like that.
Yeah, and the other thing is there are certain colors. I wish I knew what they are off the top of my head, but as a fish comes closer, it changes color to them. So you have to be careful. So that can startle a fish that thinks, okay, this is the prey I'm going after. You have it fooled, and then all of a sudden it gets within a foot and it changes color, and they're like, whoa, nope, and they pull off of it. So I wish I could remember exactly. It's been a couple of years since I looked at that. The other thing is, brown also apparently stays brown. So,
interesting.
A lot of people talk about, bucktails, and they make bucktails and they never use the brown fur. They always use the white. But I actually order custom bucktails with the brown because it stays the same color. So I'm fine with the white head and the brown fur, and I don't see any difference. There's certainly no negative. I don't know that there's a positive. But, people are getting chartreuse and all these other colors. I'm like, I'll just take the brown and the white. It's fine.
Lights and darks. I mean, it's like even going back years ago, like the pre-Gulp days, the theory we used to always have was with minnows was fishing them contrasting to the bottom. So you'd keep a black bucket on the boat and the minnows would kind of shift over to a darker hue and you'd fish that on like a sand bottom. On a mud bottom, you'd put minnows in a white bucket. They'd start to take on that color.
Right.
I can tell you after about 3 months of a eel sitting in a white bucket, they turn almost ghost white. Actually,
do they?
Forgot an eel for a good chunk of a winter in a bucket in my backyard one time. And when I went to dump the bucket out, that eel was still there.
Wow.
He was still alive too.
Those things are crazy. Like you lose one in the bilge, it's going to be alive at the end of the season. Yeah. Fortunately and unfortunately, because once the stink gets there, I mean that's the worst. But I ask me how I know. My grandfather is very unhappy with me a couple of times when I dumped eels accidentally down into the bilge. Yeah, that's
like an old trick we used to have when we wanted to play a prank on somebody down south. We'd take a shrimp and put it in their rod holder, and they wouldn't realize it was in there all day in that sun just baking.
All right, I'm going to have to use that. I'm going to have to use that. So let me ask you, so do you still do that with if you use live baits, do you still do that with the different colored buckets?
Not really. I don't use enough live bait anymore to even give it much thought.
Do you ever at this time of year consider, well, not this time of year, I guess it's a little bit later when the spot really come in. Do you ever use them for fluke at all?
I mean, I suppose I could. It just seems like it's more hassle than it's worth. The way gulps are, you're able to cast to the fish and try to convince them to eat it more than it is just dead drifting and hope that a fluke finds that spot.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
See, this is why I love when there's a new guest on, because I don't know what you do, and it's interesting to me to compare. So I always tell people I will fish live bait in a tournament, but I'll only do it if in two situations. The first one is if you're allowed 2 rods, because I'll put a spot on a circle hook and just let it go.
Okay.
And because I'm a kayak fisherman, so and then I'll just actively fish the other one. And the other one is if I'm eating lunch, instead of pulling over to a sandbar, I'll just drift with a spot sitting down with the one rod that's out. That's the only time that I actually make the effort to use it. But I catch some really good fish on those spot. And they're never small, obviously, because the spot are too big. But you're right. It's just a lot of luck. And it's not very rewarding to catch something on a circle hook, as you're drifting. I didn't do anything. I just started reeling, especially a fluke. It's not like the fight is going to knock you over.
Yeah. I mean, it could have been they were hitting your artificials before you dropped that spot down. You just missed them. I had that instance the other day. I was out in the ocean sitting on a wreck, just myself was out scouting around. And I had a fish, must have picked it up like 4 or 5 times. And every time just didn't find the pointy side of the hook. Then I sat there, gave it a couple more minutes. I'm still like, damn, this fish should be in here somewhere. Where'd he go? And then sure as shit, he picked it up and ended up being like a 5-pound fluke.
There you go. That's a nice one.
It took him a few attempts till he finally found the right side of the hook, I guess.
Yeah. Well, they're not exactly intelligent, even though people like to say that.
They're dumb aggressive, I guess is the way to look at it.
Yes.
They're one of the more aggressive fish and how they strike. It's just that their mouth is shaped sideways to how our hook is shaped.
Right.
So unless they can turn their head and get off the bottom, really flare their gills open, they can't quite grab the hook. Right. Actually.
Yeah.
That's why I'm a believer in smaller hooks. I like smaller hooks for fluke. Smaller hooks, thinner wire. I know some people tend to buy bigger hooks, longer. I like smaller stuff.
I typically, well, I guess it depends. It depends on what size I'm fishing and what depth. What are you doing at this time of year as far as depth in the, well, where are you looking primarily when you're going out for fluke at this time? Are you going shallow? Are you going deep, drop offs, docks, bridges? What are you looking at first?
We're all of the above. We're not quite in the time of year yet where the fluke are in the inlets. I mean, I know they're swimming through the inlets. They just don't seem to feed there. I think that just could be food sources, things like that. So mostly in the back. As far as depth goes, sometimes people always say that thing, oh, what depth were they hitting at today, this and that. Honestly, I think that's a lot of BS. I think it's situational based on where you are in the bay at the time.
And the temperatures.
Yeah, time of the tide, temperature, time of day, whatever it may be. I mean, I could go and possibly catch 1 in 2 feet of water and then move across the bay somewhere else and go catch 1 in 22 feet.
Right.
I think it's just more understanding how they relate to the currents and things like temperature, which is an important thing.
We had a conversation about this last week now I do think that generally the depths change season to season. So as we get into the warmer weather and the warmer waters, they're going to go deeper because they need that, more oxygen in the water and everything. But we are literally in a between stage. I mean, they are comfortable everywhere. And that's a problem for fishermen.
Yeah. But even in the warmer months, sometimes think about where the food is.
Yeah.
So they're going to go up into those shallows to feed and then go back down into those channels to maybe kill time or feed on other stuff that's deeper down in the channels.
Yeah. Do you ever do nighttime fluke trips?
Not specifically for fluke, but I've caught plenty at night, especially throwing unscented soft plastics around bridges and stuff like that.
Yeah.
We used to see that a lot during October, like early October. It seems like we would have this push right on the backside of the mullet run. There would be some kind of transition there where I think some of the fluke would come in from the ocean. More of them would come in kind of sniffing out those mullet, so to speak, and then end up on these bridges at night where you'd end up catching like a half a dozen fluke over 20 inches. You're in 30 feet of water around a bridge piling and you're getting down no deeper than 2-3 feet of water. They're all up near the surface feeding on bait.
That's a hell of a night.
Yeah.
It used to be, I mean, I say it a lot. It's not used to be. My favorite time to fish for fluke is at night. But in the summer, it's the one time at night is where I say start looking up as a primary spot. First of all, I do say the bridges. The bridges are by far to me the number one spot at night throughout the entire season. But after that, that's when you can go back up in the flats and fish 1 foot of water. And they're going to be up there, especially, not just in a flat, flat, nothing around it. But if there's any kind of structure in there, any type of predictable current, they will move up there at night and just gorge themselves up on those flats.
Well, that's how down south they have that gig fishery where they spear them. albeit it's a different subspecies of flounder because they're southern flounder, not summer flounder.
Right.
But still similar behaviors nonetheless.
Yeah, they're very similar. I mean, really, the only difference besides the size, the only real noticeable difference besides the size is generally going to be the salinity that they can tolerate, right? So the summer flounder can tolerate near fresh water without an issue, whereas the southern is a little bit, or maybe I have it reversed.
Well, I
think it's reversed.
With the summer flounder, I'll catch them up near freshwater line during the cooler months.
Yeah. Yeah, so up in the rivers.
They end up in the same areas as striper winter over. Some of the fluke winter over in those same areas. I think it's just a selective thing. I think the main biomass heads offshore and goes out 60, 70 miles to the shelf. Yeah. But sometimes, just like you see some birds that don't migrate in the winter, some of them just decide to end up in the deep holes that the striper are in. Because I'll catch them mixed in the cold months.
Have you ever fished the Chesapeake?
Not in a long time.
So
as a kid,
so there's an area around Annapolis, the Y River, and I actually caught a summer flounder in the Y River. That thing is nowhere like the only way to get there is to come all the way up the Chesapeake or to come down through the D&C Canal. Mm-hmm. I mean, it was essentially fresh water, and I caught. And now it wasn't big, but I caught it there. And in the same river, I ended up catching a Spanish mackerel and a bunch of huge specks, obviously striped bass and white perch. They were all within 2 trips. I caught all of those, and it's essentially fresh water. So yeah, they definitely do have the tolerance to go wherever they want, but the size of that thing tells me that it was not there for a long time. It was a young, it was probably only 10 inches. So they have to be spawning somewhere near there. You're not going to get a 10-inch summer flounder into the Y River unless it was spawned fairly close. I think.
They can move too. If you found a Spanish in there, same idea. They're following the bait in. So it's possible that flounder was doing the same thing.
It was amazing. Talk about the last thing that I ever thought I'd catch. We were just moving spots. We were picking up some striped bass, and we decided, look, we're going to head down this channel. It was about 40 feet deep. We're like, we're going to head down the middle of the river, just a nice, easy pedal. And we were changing our gear over for specks because we wanted to hit a point. And the point was about a mile away. And I'm just trolling for striped bass, and I hook into this thing. I'm like, it's a little striped bass. And I pull it in. I'm like, oh my God, that's a speck. I think I actually have it in the intro to this show in that video at the beginning. It was a decent sized Spanish. I was shocked though. Like I did not expect to see it there. I mean, you were hundreds and hundreds of miles from the actual salt, and it was there.
Yeah, I wonder with their biology what the salt tolerances are for both the fluke and the Spanish.
So yeah, I mean a Gulf flounder, I wouldn't be shocked because they can basically almost live in pure fresh water. But I didn't think a summer flounder I would get it. And I have no idea about the Spanish mackerel because to me, those are always an out front fish.
Yep.
Right.
They're built like it. Anatomically, they're built like it with the hardtail.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. But that was interesting. But it just goes to show like you can catch them in places you wouldn't necessarily expect. Just like the whole sheep's head thing. Everyone said they have to be near inlets. No, they don't.
No, they swim up the rivers. People don't realize that.
They go everywhere. Yeah. Yeah, we had Paul from Great Bay Outfitters on. He's like, they're not where you think they are. We've been talking for years, and all of us, we're listening to all these experts, and then it turns out they were wrong. We're catching them 6 miles from an inlet, 8 miles from an inlet, and it makes sense. It makes sense that they're all over the place, and I don't think that they actually leave either. I think we have a huge resident population of those.
Yeah, I think it's an east-to-west migration more than anything, and same idea with the fluke. It's just like that. Some will winter over up near the freshwater, and some will head out offshore.
Yeah. Do you ever target sheep's head?
Yes.
You do? Yep. How do you like? I'm asking for a personal reason. How do you like fishing personally? If you had a day off, would you fish for sheep's head?
Oh yeah. Yep.
Damn.
Yeah, they're a fun time and a little bit of a challenge. Yeah, I miss how it was 10 years ago with them. It seems like we've noticed the decline in size and numbers of them over the years.
Yeah, so 10 years ago, so you were catching them. You were catching them before everybody knew that you could catch them.
Yeah, I think the pressure's definitely changed them a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, it was down in Cape May County. I would say it was kind of like the heart of where it exploded. And, the first day that I actually caught them, I caught multiple double digits, let them go. But I see guys down there pulling out 10, 12, 15, 8+ pounders and keeping every single one of them.
And they're old fish.
They're old fish. And I know there are a lot of small fish, but it is, I don't know. I don't know the research, so I don't want to say there need to be regs, but
well, that's concerned. The problem is that there is no research in state with them. And the only way they'll put a regulation in place this is what I was told when asked. The only way they'll put a regulation in place is if they see a decline in effort for the species.
Right. Which they haven't been tracking.
Which obviously there won't be a decline in effort because everybody and their mother's learning how to do it because there is no other fish to catch anymore. So as other species disappear, they're shifting their focus to the new species.
So I did hear unofficially that they are doing research.
They are now? Okay, that's good.
Yes. So I'm very interested. Yeah. I'm one of those guys where I get it. You don't want them to regulate something just on a hunch, but I'm really concerned because I honestly, I don't have the patience for sheepshead. I just don't. I love catching them. I hate fishing for them. I can't sit there on a piling or on pilings in a kayak for hours at a time. I'll do like a half an hour, 45 minutes, and then I'm on to fluke and strike back. I'm looking for the bycatch, at that point. But yeah, it sounds to me like, and this is somebody that I think knows that there is actually some research that they're going to be using in the mid-Atlantic to start looking at regulations. And I hate regulations, but I think we need it.
In New Jersey or just in the mid-Atlantic, like the region?
New Jersey.
Okay, that's good to hear then.
Yeah. I don't know if it's true, but this person, I think, would know.
Okay, that's good.
And has a strong indication that there's something going on with the research. So let's cross our fingers because again, I don't love catching them, but everybody else does. Yeah. And I would hate to see it get devastated. Now, weak fish was devastated for a different reason, but that's my favorite fish to catch, to target. And yes, it's a different reason, but I would hate to see something happen to sheepshead along the lines of weak fish. And it's unchecked right now. And when you're seeing dozens between, 3 or 4 guys, it's a concern to me.
Well, you've got guys cast netting them too. And then they're pulling them in that way. So they're not even fishing for them. They're just throwing cast nets around bridge structure. And getting them like that.
And I talk to spear fishermen. I mean, they'll come through every once in a while and they'll just come up and you say, well, what do you see? And they say, no, there's none on your piling. Go to the next. There's a bunch over there. But they're seeing less and less, at least last year. I haven't talked to any this year. Last year, I talked to a guy. He's like, yeah, I used to see so many. He's like hundreds around a piling. And everyone thinks there's nothing there because they're not getting bites. Well, they're just not biting. But there's hundreds. And he was saying, I'm lucky if I see, 10 or 12 on this bridge where I used to see hundreds. So I'm thinking there's a problem. Now, maybe they're moving.
Numbers are down and the size is decreased, basically.
Yeah.
So it used to be I couldn't find one under 20 inches in my area. And now most of them are hovering that 20-inch mark or so, give or take a little bit. They're just not as big, which means you're going to get a lot more short bites out of them.
Yeah, and they're slow growers.
Yeah, very slow. I mean, I don't know if you've talked about it before with your audiences, but generally the growth rate, it's like at year 10, they're about 20 inches long. And then after that, they only grow in increments of like a quarter inch a year, maybe a half an inch, something like that. So you very well are catching 30, 35-year-old sheepshead in some cases when you're catching those high 20-inch fish.
Right. And, for me, generally, not every species, but generally the younger fish taste better.
Yeah.
So, why it's kind of like a black drum. It's great to catch a 70-pound, 80-pound, 100-pound black drum. Why would you keep it? That's not that's not what you want to be eating.
I open those up and see those worms, and you want to eat one again.
And the big bluefish. I really like bluefish. I prefer, a 20-inch to 25-inch bluefish over a 35-inch bluefish. It's just, to me, it just tastes better. So, I haven't eaten a lot of sheep's head, but I just generally say, the younger fish, the mid-range fish are probably the better ones to be targeting and keeping. So, all right. Well, I want to make sure that we do talk about striped bass, because striped bass, everybody, when they talk about you, they always start with striped bass. And there is a transition. I know you said that you're pretty well done fishing for them or targeting them for charters.
Pretty much wrapped up. Yeah. I've got like 1 or 2 more trips just because they asked about it ahead of time, and they're in town the same week every year. So I understand that.
Yeah. So let's talk about that. And let's also talk about the conservation concerns with striped bass as we shift into the warmer waters, let's say in about 2 weeks from now. Around 4th of July, we'll probably start seeing the temperatures creeping up pretty steadily until until mid-August, where they're probably going to peak. What's your thought? Do you want to kind of just give your thought on targeting striped bass as we go forward into the season?
Well, I mean, when you get into the summer months, they don't release too well. That's the biggest problem with them. You're looking at warmer temperatures. For the most part, they come in like a wet rag. You might as well hook a dogfish in some cases, and it'll fight harder than a striper does when the water's approaching that 80-degree mark. The other factor with it is most of those fish are summer residents, and usually on the smaller side. They virtually don't exist anymore. Not in the numbers that they used to, because we haven't seen a strong spawn in about 8 years.
Right.
So most of the fish that are of that larger size class, not all, but most of them have moved on already at that point in the year, or at least by now, pretty much.
I get people that get upset when I say that it's not really a summer fishery, because you can catch them all year. To me, the smart thing to do for the fish, and even for yourself, is if you must target at this time of the year and into the summer, to me, it becomes a nighttime fishery only for a couple of reasons. First of all, you're going to have a better shot at them. But second of all, releasing them into cooler water is going to be key. But I'm pretty sure, the water's not dropping 10 degrees overnight, right? But there's definitely going to be a little bit less stress on them. So I would say, if you're conservation minded, keep in mind the cooler the water, the more the oxygen is dissolved, the more dissolved oxygen within that water, the better it is for the fish on their release. And when you're talking 80-degree water, even if it's midnight, it's still only going to have what 80-degree water can hold.
Well, it's also tidal and situational too. So a lot of times if you have an upwelling that popped up and you're on that incoming tide, that cooler tide, with that extra oxygen in the water coming in from the ocean, those fish tend to wake up more. So like if I were to say when would be a good time, early summer at least, to target them, look for when one of those upwellings is happening and look for an incoming tide. A combination of those things is going to wake those fish up a little more. Otherwise, those fish are just a little slow. They might not really want to eat much of anything anyway. They might take a swipe at a topwater lure, but they're just not as active.
Right. I'll be honest. One of my favorite things when I'm targeting striped bass is I don't enjoy fishing migration as much as I enjoy targeting resident stripers. I just think it's a whole different thing. It's one thing to find a big ass 1 mile strip of bunker and just toss a line out and just catch one of the 10 million fish that are there. It's a whole other thing to go up along a sod bank at dusk and fish a popper. It's a whole different experience. But I find that, that's what you need to do at this time of the bridges, though, again, bridges and lights at night, you'll get them. Anyone who has dock lights is just your best friend. But you got to keep in mind that temperature. I really like your thought. If there's upwelling, you could almost just switch over because it'll turn them on. They're there, but it'll turn them on.
Unless the water turns that really bad brown that happens sometimes, that would be the only thing that fights against you. Everything else about the upwellings during the summer are a good thing. You just have to know how the fish are going to relate to it, whether it's a striper or a fluke. You just have to know how they're going to relate to that water temperature.
Yeah,
too.
I love that you just said that. I heard, so I had about a year off where I was sick, so I didn't fish. And it just so happened, I was getting messages from a lot of people. I was like, tell me what you're doing. I got to live through you. I can't hit the water this year. And I just kept getting, a couple of those people are in the chat right now. I kept getting, if you were ever going to get sick and miss time, you picked the right time because this upwelling is killing us. And I'm thinking, but the fish have to be there. They didn't go away. They're just behaving differently.
Yeah.
And now let's say, so we had upwelling the other day. How long do you see, and let's talk inlets and back. All right. So not out front. How long do you see a change in the behavior of the fish, or does one day of upwelling really do much to knock things off?
It depends how deep the upwelling was and how cold it really got. So right now we're still at the time of year where even with an upwelling, it's not that much colder than what the water was in the bay.
Right.
So there's not that giant contrast. Once we lock into a warm summer pattern where the water in the ocean's in the 70s and then it drops to 58 overnight, when I see that, I know right where to go. And that's to some of the more early season fluke spots. Some of those spots that are in the slightly darker water, places that are going to retain the heat. And they're going to want to get up on those areas.
Back up on the flats and where they spill out into the channels.
Or you have the color change in the water and it's not quite that clean green water coming in from the ocean.
Right. Yeah, we were talking about that last week. I don't know if you know Benji, crabbing and fishing. We were talking about, where you target them at certain times of the year. And he made the point, it's a great point, that it's not so much about the time of the year. It's really going to depend on the water temperatures, because the water temperatures pretty well dictate everything. We can talk about air temperatures, but the fish don't care if it's not impacting the water temperatures. And that's really what it comes down to. So now, so if you have upwelling and it's, let's say it's a very short, deep upwelling, you get a change from 70 and all of a sudden you got 50 degrees coming in and it lasts one day. Do you see that disrupt anything, or do they still stick in the same pattern? Does it take them a couple days to switch?
I think you'll see like a hangover where they'll be there maybe the next day as it warms up, but then some of them start to move their way out of those areas.
Okay.
And I only say some because others I have a feeling are just in those areas all through the hot months too. Yeah. It's just like the striper, they're not as active with the warmer water, or at least they don't appear that way for an angler. They'll still eat that crab that's on the bottom if it's in front of them. Right. They're just not going to be swimming around as much because the water is just warmer, less oxygen, things like that.
Yeah. Okay. All right. I think it's a good tip for people, and maybe it should be the theme of the episodes that I do is, stop fishing the month and start fishing, the conditions a little bit more, because people get locked into things. I hear people, one of the old things, I mean, you've heard this, once the dogwoods bloom and 8 other things happen, that's when you start fishing for drum. Yeah. No, it's not. That's just when the boats go in the water, right? Because it just happens to be that you always put your boat in the first week of May.
Well, I think back this year, I think it was 3 weeks ahead of the dogwoods, the black drum were biting.
Yes. Yeah. And there was a nice bite this year too. And it's still going on. Although a lot of captains are kind of wrapping up their season for them. I saw some photos from a charter last night where they pulled in some nice ones down in Delaware Bay area. Yeah. For those that are wondering.
I don't see a lot of them in my region. For some reason, they seem to skip my area. I'll get them as bycatch, sometimes sheep setting.
Yeah.
But that's about it, really. I'd love for them to school up in my area. Good. They'd be a blast on the flats on the fly rod. That would be great.
All right. So let me ask you this. So we've had this discussion. It's one of these things that me and the guys that I fish with out on the water, we talk about just random things as we're baking our butts off in the middle of the summer, drifting around. There's something about Ocean City and Atlantic City that ruins, like you'll have a species of fish just north and just south. And for some reason, they tend to skip Brigantine, AC, and OC. I don't know. And the one that the one guy kept bringing up was, why doesn't anyone ever catch black drum? Because I know people that target them in Ocean City and they just don't catch them. Is there anything that you can think of?
That's the rivers.
It is? Okay.
More specifically, just at least in my region, I can speak for. It seems like behind Atlantic City, like Absecon Inlet North, They have deep water adjacent, but then they also have more of a green water and a river that's further removed from the inlet and ocean.
Yeah.
So when you get up in the back of those areas, they still have clean green water in a lot of places. When you get where I'm at, you'll have brown water coming out from the rivers all the way out to sea. There is no divide of clean green water in some of those cases. Sure, we'll get it. If we get a good north wind or a northeast wind, it'll blow that clean green water in on an incoming.
Yeah.
But then you get another blowout tide that blows out all that river water again.
Now let's take it over to striped bass. What do you think depresses the striped bass? Is it the fact of the orientation of the inlet and the direction that it is?
You mean, like, generally speaking, how the stripers seem to go out to sea more?
Yeah, they just skip by. Is it because of the hook right there?
It's the depth contour.
It is.
They tend to like that 50 to 100 feet of water when they're migrating.
And that's nowhere close to your inlet.
It's close, but not close enough.
Not close enough. No.
So, we have plenty of 50 feet inside a 3 mile, but it's not enough. They're not following that line down. They're out just a few more miles usually.
Right.
So then you're just dependent on them to follow the bait in. Or fortunately, in some instances, because they want to swim up the rivers to winter over, you'll get them doing that as well. But the tricky part there is just that divide, because that water that's out, 50 plus feet of water, that water out there is going to be warmer. So as you get later into the fall, the water tight to the beach is going to be in the low 40s, maybe mid 40s. You go out into that 50 plus feet of water, that water is going to be like 52 degrees out there.
Right.
So they're going to stay in that, swim through the cold stuff, and then head into their winter overholes, and they just might not feed. They'll kind of slide under the radar on their way up those rivers.
I'll tell you what, for my money, and I fish the entire coast of New Jersey as my primary, I would consider regular territory for me. Anything from Staten Island in New York, I'll go down all the way through every inlet, every backwater in New Jersey, into the Delaware Bay a little bit, and then down into Delaware. And then I skip over to the Chesapeake. Out of all of them, I do find, and maybe it's just me, I have the biggest challenges in OC. It just doesn't set up the way that and actually AC I think is pretty easy compared to Ocean City. There's just something about that area for me that it's not that I can't catch fish and I can't limit and I can't catch big fish. It just, to me, it just hits a little bit different. And I'm fishing it a little bit differently than I would just south 2 inlets or north 2 inlets.
Well, it's even the same for me if I'm immediately adjacent to the river or the inlet, or if I'm a couple miles north or south. Because let's say with the fluke is a great example. A lot of guys, they hate fishing low tide behind Ocean City because they say they stop chewing. All you have to do is move over to the different color change in the water, and those fish will chew through the tide.
Yeah, I was going to say, I actually prefer lower tides behind OC.
Yeah, it's just, you got to find that greener water again. That river water dumps out at low tide. It's probably not as much salinity drop. It could just be the temperature increase.
Yeah.
But when you're getting into that darker water that's coming out, it's going to retain heat more. So it's going to be a whole different ballgame. The water temperature, oxygen probably as well in the water.
Yeah, and it does bring out some hot water too in the summer. I mean, that water coming out of those rivers, it's not cool.
No, that water's mid 80s. I've had it as hot as 89 up there during the summer in some areas.
Yeah, and if we're talking about water temperatures, that's going to be a significant difference. Some of these other rivers, they're flowing out, and it's mostly a slower current coming out with less water, unless it rains, and then it's cooler, right? But you always have a steady flow coming down out of those rivers down there.
And you got to remember, 100 years ago, there used to be eelgrass there to catch some of that sediment on the way out. That's gone now. That disappeared in the early 1900s.
Yeah, totally gone. So this is a separate topic. I just want to mention this. I've been trying to find, there's these organizations that you have the Billion Oyster Project and offshoots of that. But then there's the ones that are planting eelgrass. And I cannot find anything in the OC Atlantic City area that's doing anything substantial. I was initially looking in Cape May County because I fish the backwaters. I would prefer to not catch anything, but fish in the marshes all day. just trying to find something. And there was 0 eelgrass back there.
Yeah.
And when you find it, I'll put down a camera. It'll be 6 feet of water, 5 feet of water, 4 feet of water. And I'll look and it's all dead and decayed. And there's no oyster. Every oyster bed is just dead oysters from 10 years ago. Do you know of any initiatives in your area?
Not for eelgrass. From what I've been told by biologists, it's a lost cause.
The pollution.
Even though it's what grabs the sediment and what cleans the water, you need the water to be sediment free and clean in order to plant it to have the photosynthesis that makes it want to grow.
So that's what's killing it.
So it's possible.
Start to grow and it gets blown out.
It's possible with the oyster programs that are coming up, little ones here and there, mostly just different oyster farms where they're raising them in the baskets.
Yeah.
It's possible that over time, that'll put enough oyster in the water that maybe the water will clean up another notch or two, and then that would be enough for some of the eelgrass to take hold again, possibly in some areas.
So we'll keep an eye on Great Bay because they have some substantial or growing oyster presence there with the farms.
Yeah, we have a couple in my area now too here behind Ocean City. There's a couple guys doing them in different areas.
Oh, good.
Yeah. As far as success on how much oyster it's actually putting in the water elsewhere, I really haven't noticed it yet, but it's possible. It's most likely it is because that's how they reproduce. They drop that seed in the water, clings to old shell beds, and grows more oysters.
All right. Well, I'll just have to cross my fingers and hope that somebody gets that going. I just feel the need to get involved in something, but it needs to be something in the areas that I fish.
Yeah.
Right. I don't want to jump on look, all you New York guys, I love you. And I love watching your videos. I love watching or looking at your pictures. I love that you watch this and listen to this, but I don't fish New York, but twice a year. I would love to see something in New Jersey. And New Jersey, it's really weird because they have such a great artificial rec program and such a terrible every other type of program. And I guess it's better than New York, whose artificial reef system is terrible. I mean, they sell us their cars and we put them off in New Jersey, but yeah, I would love to get involved in something like that. I do have a question in here for you that I want you to have a chance to answer. How many passengers can you take? This is actually my brother. He's big into,
okay.
How many passengers can you take on a trip?
Got it. Okay. Usually I do up to 2 for striper and stuff where we're getting real technical or casting, or even for sheep's head where we're dropping down next to a specific piling, things like that. And then I'll do up to 4 for things like fluke where you're bottom bouncing. Even sometimes tog, I'll do up to 4. I just have to adjust the locations I'm fishing.
Okay. All right. And what boat do you have?
It's a 23 Cape Classic.
So you got the room. The question is, do you have the room for everyone to be swinging and
swinging trebles or just moving around? Exactly. If I'm in a foot of water, people are moving around on the boat. Shoot, if I have my dog on board and he moves around too much, he'll scare the fish.
Right.
So you get that many people out there like that. Plus, you're also cutting a little bit into the draft of the boat. So when I'm trying to crawl on my belly to get into somewhere, that many more people in the boat, even having too much gas in the boat makes that difficult sometimes.
Right.
Because I'm rubbing that keel on the bottom on my way into places.
Well, I was going to say you have to really know your area where you're fishing if you're getting back in there, because I have seen boats getting stuck and they get really jealous of the kayaks really quick, but there have been boats that have been stuck and I've had to bring up my drive in the kayak to get out of where they were.
Well, that's what I do with the trolling motor too on my boat. Getting up on the bow and lifting the trolling motor up just enough that it's getting in the water, but just enough that it can keep me having forward momentum to drag me through that mud somewhere to get from A to B.
What's funny, my brother and I on my boat, we used to go out and we were stupid. Like we would just run right up into the flats and just wait. And it was always too long, mainly because we were screwing around and not paying attention. Did you ever get in the situation where you had to take the anchor and throw it and then pull yourself with the anchor across? Oh my God.
I understand what technique, but can't say I've had to do that.
Oh, yeah. Well, Behind Avalon had to do that, and that muck smells terrible. So the entire bow of the boat and So, all right. Is there anything that you want to add for people? We're up at the hour. Again, you probably share your contact information for those that want to go out on a charter. You want to put out your information one more time?
Oh yeah, no problem. Yes, so it's ocnjfishing.com is my website. You can also look me up on Instagram. It's Capt Brian Williams, and on Facebook it's Badfish Charters OC. Easiest way to get a hold of me is email or phone call. I don't always get the DMs on the social medias as easily.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much for coming on. I appreciate it. I'm looking forward to a good summer. I'm planning on being out sometime in the next 2 weeks. I got a new granddaughter on the way, so I need to get my fishing done before that. So,
it's a good time of year to fish now. Everything's waking up for summer. I'm just waiting on the cobia to show up. That would be great.
Yeah, so I was planning on going this past weekend, but I just got back today from the Shenandoah River, and I was planning on doing some freshwater there. And Brian, it's the drought down there is just as bad as up here. The water was only about a foot deep.
Wow.
In the Shenandoah, I was like, come on, man. So we're on the dock and I can literally see the bottom. I'm like, there are no fish here. I was like, I see one rock bass. And this is like legendary smallmouth fishing, and nope, couldn't get them. So I'm looking forward to getting out there soon. I got the kayak all ready and charged up. So thank you again for coming on. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, anytime. And everyone, will be back next week. So until next week, everyone, get out there, get on the water, and get some tight lines.